Hello. Hello.
Okay, let me go. All right, everyone. We're getting ready to start our next talk. Our speaker is Len Noe, Biohacker, the Invisible Threat. Thank you.
What's happening? Hello, California. In case you couldn't figure it out, I'm not from here. First, thank you, B-Sides, for letting me actually come out and present this, and thank you guys for actually showing up to listen. We're going to have some fun today, and we're going to try and go from science fiction over to some science fact. So, start up my little clicker here. A little bit of background on me. My name, as she said, is Len Noe, pronounced no, opposite of yes. And if you ask my parents, I was named extremely appropriately. I've heard no, pretty much my whole damn life. I currently am a technical evangelist and a white hat hacker for CyberArk software. I've been with CyberArk for 9 years. Been in IT professionally for going on 27 years in roles ranging from programmer to systems architect. But I've been kind of breaking into computers and making them do things that they weren't supposed to do all the way back into the Commodore 64 days. So if anybody wants to come out, we can talk about some comma 8, comma 1 after this is over, man. I love your mask, by the way. I spent pretty much most of my time in my youth as either what would be classified as a black hat or a gray hat. I'm professionally trained, but I've come across most of my knowledge through practical application. I'm actually pretty active on social media, and I invite everybody reach out over LinkedIn, GitHub, check out some of my toys and tools that I throw out there for everybody. Yes, that's a QR code. Yes, this is a security conference. No, this is not going to take you anywhere bad. This would be a very career-limiting move if I decided to do that. But I'm glad to see y'all were thinking. So I wanted to start off today's talk by asking you guys just a pretty simple question. What does a cyborg look like? You know, when you hear the word cyborg, what comes to your mind? Maybe Terminator, Darth Vader, Star Wars, Star Trek, something like that. You know, I'm not sure what it's going to be in your head, but I'm probably willing to bet that they have some similarities. They're probably very robotic, possibly a lot of chrome, but the truth is that's not the case. Cyborgs are not only on the movie screens anymore, you know, they walk among you, and you might actually even be friends with one of them, and you just don't even know it. These are actually my hands. I am a biohacker in the truest sense of the word. I'm not only an augmented human with microchips in my hands, but I'm also, as I stated earlier, I'm a white hat. So I'm a hacker that has actually modified my body to take advantage of the available technology to turn myself into the attack vector. You know, I'm going to go through what you see on the x-rays here, and I'll give you a little bit of information about each one of the chips, and I actually have some more implants since the time these x-rays were actually taken. So we're going to go through, and we'll start here with this one. This is actually called a FlexNext. This is a combination RFID and NFC chip. This one and the one right below it, which is the next chip, these are essentially the exact same chips. I started with the standard Next chip. This is a BioGlass encapsulated microchip, and we'll be going into a little bit of more explanation in terms of what the differences are between the BioGlass and the flexible membrane implants in a couple of slides. But the Next chip, as I said, this was actually the very first implant that I ever got. And all of my implants were installed for the specific purposes of offensive security. So once I got this one, I was able to get it installed into my body. I realized that it did not give me the range I need in order to be able to hold a phone in its natural position. You know, the antenna on the actual Next chip is very, very small, so and as such, you almost have to be sitting right on top of the receiver in order for it to actually be able to read clearly. The FlexNext is a larger version of this and actually gets me up to about 1.5 inches to 2 inches worth of distance away from the reader in order to be able to actually energize the chip and be able to send and receive data. So this was the chip that actually allowed me that ergonomics of being able to actually hold your cell phone or mobile device in my hand in a normal configuration, and the signal will actually pass through the meat of my hand to the large implant I have on the top of this hand. I have a Flex M1 Magic. This is basically a MyFair Classic with the 1K rewritable function. This will allow me to emulate pretty much any number of older access cards, from public transit to membership tokens to physical access for buildings. Believe it or not, most of the hotels that I stay in are all still using MyFair Classic or MyFair Ultralights. I also have what is called a VivoKey Spark 2. This is actually a crypto bionic chip. It's actually part of a multi-factor authentication routine that I've set up to be able to access my crypto wallet. This one actually does have its own ecosystem and is actually something that's being pushed for multi-factor, FIDO, OTP. If you definitely something to look into. They're currently working both within the United States and in Japan. Okay. Since the time these x-rays were taken, I have quite a few additional implants. I have a Flex EM in my wrist right here underneath the nose of the skull on this tattoo. And that actually allows me the ability to emulate pretty much the rest of the popular physical access cards, including Prox 1, 2, and 3, HID, Indala, Pyramid, and just a ton more. I also have a Titan biomagnet in my left pinky. This is not one of the gimmicky magnets. It's not meant to be able to pick up a lot of heavy weight, but what it does allow me the ability is it allows me to feel electromagnetic fields and electromagnetic currents. I get asked all the time, Len, what does that do for you? I do physical pen tests as well. And I'd be willing to bet quite a bit of money that if we went out and take a look at any of y'all's warehouses, pretty much most warehouse exterior doors are all using the same types of locking mechanisms. Everybody uses magnetic mag locks. Mag locks require power for an electromagnet. I can actually stand on the outside of your building and run my hands over your wall, and I can actually find the line of electricity going to that magnet. I'm not saying it will, but it can open up the opportunities of different options for shimming, power interruption. It just allows me the ability to see what's going on inside the wall. I currently have sitting at home right now, I actually have a Desfire V2 8K NFC chip, as well as a new chip that's recently hit the market called the Walletmore. The Walletmore is actually an implantable chip that allows me to do tap to pay the same way we can do with Android Wallet and iPay, or any of your NFC-based credit cards. So these are two implants that I'm just waiting for time to get into my body mod guy, and we'll be adding those to my body, and we'll just, you know, it's kind of like getting an upgrade, you know, on your car. You know, I just want some new functions, man. You know, I'll be the new Len 3.0. So, as I said, augmented humans are not science fiction. We're here. We're not going anywhere. And as this technology continues to evolve, so will we. I've broken today's talk down into 3 different parts. We're going to do a yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on the history of the transhuman movement, just a little bit to kind of give you an idea of where we kind of got our start, and that the biohacker or transhuman is actually the point where science, technology, and humanity all meet. And since we are sitting at a B-Sides conference, I've actually even had people ask me, would I be the point where machine identity and human identity cross? You know, that's just one of those things to kind of put in the back of your head, because technically I do have my human identity, but I also have the ability to do machine identity. Things to think about. So, the idea behind implanting technology inside the human bodies has actually been around since the 1950s. The patent for the first cardiac pacemaker was actually submitted in 1952, and it was the size of a table radio. With the advent of the transistor in the mid-1950s, the ability to construct a fully implantable device was achieved in May of 1958. 1964 gave us the first implantable technology that could take data from the body as feedback and make adjustments accordingly. throughout the 70s and the 80s, there was some stuff that happened, but I mean, it wasn't like major breakthroughs. 1990 is when things really started to change for the transhuman or implant community, from the creation of smart devices, smart prosthetics, all the way up through to artificial intelligence, which is pretty commonplace in today's society. For biohackers and transhumans, our history was forged by the medical profession to address deficiencies of the human body, but from a reactive perspective. And by that, I mean that the issues were already there, and additionally, there were no options for any type of individual to enhance themselves through any type of elected surgery or through any type of technology that was available. So that brings us to today. Who are we as transhumans today? People like myself are referred to by all kinds of different names. Biohacker, grinder, transhuman. I was actually in Sweden a couple of weeks ago, and I was told that I am what is known as a wet work. That was a new one on me. First time I've heard it. It's okay. It doesn't matter what you want to call me. Regardless of the label, I'm just another person in a very long line of people who shared the same concept of moving beyond the human form that we were born into. Actually, the term transhuman was actually first coined by an Englishman by the name of Julian Huxley back in 1957. And the movement that he created was fueled by multiple people looking to extend the capabilities of the human being itself. So when we talk about implantable technology, where do we find it? Anybody want to give me a guess here? Come on. Close. If we could do it at Radio Shack, that would be so awesome. But the truth is, it's the same place we find everything else. Close. Internet. I'm going to check. I don't know if I can get them on Amazon or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. Here in the United States, if this is something that you're interested in, definitely hit me up when I'm done. I'll be happy to go into more specifics. I do not work for this company. I'm just going to throw this out there because it's usually one of the first questions I get. Where can you find these things? I get all of my stuff from a distributor here in the U.S. They're based out of Seattle, Washington. They're called DangerousThings.com. Yeah, I know. I thought it was an amazing name for an amazing company. In Europe, there's an additional company called KSEC. These guys are kind of the two big ones in North and South America and in Europe. Do your research. This is kind of like the idea of getting a tattoo or a body piercing, but a little bit more crazy. So, when we talk about the types of implants available, what are the use cases? I get that question all the time. So we have magnets, and we have multiple types of magnets. You have lifting magnets as well as biosensing magnets. Now, everybody asks me, Len, are you afraid of, what are you afraid of? And are you afraid that these things are going to move? It's going to move to your heart. You're being tracked by the man. No, what I'm afraid of is other very, very strong magnets. You don't know pain until somebody throws an earth magnet at you and it snaps onto the magnet that's inside your finger and squeezing from both inside and outside of your skin. Not pleasant. My magnets, like I said, are not meant to lift things. But if that's your thing, rock on. We have flexible membrane implants. As you can see, the chip itself very small, but we have a very large coil of copper wire. This is the antenna. This is why when I was originally showing you guys my x-rays, the very first one was that bioglass encapsulated. That's what this is. So if you can take a look at this, those little glass tubes are not much bigger than a grain of long grain rice. The flexible membranes, they're about 2.5 to 3 inches long. So you can definitely see the difference in terms of antenna size, which will also be proportionate to the amount of distance you're going to need to be from your reader in order to energize that tag. And due to the fact that this is California, and I know you guys are like a party town, we also have LEDs. So, I mean, if you guys want to go partying out at night, and you can do the whole, I am Iron Man, you can have it blinking in your hand, whatever, I'm one of those guys that if you want to join my club of crazy cyborgs, I don't care what you put in your body. You know, I do have the ability, if you guys would like, hit me up offline. We can go into the processes in order to install these, and I do use the term install because it is kind of hardware going into the body. But this is surgery. This is scalpels, this is dermal elevators, this is sutures. This is not necessarily a fool's errand. You know, when we talk about these devices and what they were originally intended for, they were designed to make people's lives easier. You know, for anybody out there with a Tesla, Model 3, there's actually an implant that you can actually get the valet key added to an implant, put that in your hand, and you can just jump in your car and drive. You know, or maybe people have like a little fob to get into a gym or a shared garage. You know, like I said, we have the wallet more now, so we can actually do contactless payment the same way that you can with credit cards or even your mobile device. And every single one of these would actually constitute a legitimate use case for these types of devices. Unfortunately, just like in the real world, not all of us are friendly. You know, as security professionals, we need to start looking beyond what we're comfortable with. You know, beyond the normal attacks that we've been dealing with for years. You know, the attacks in the end game may not have changed, but the delivery method is literally coming right off the movie screen and into our companies. You know, as security admins, we know the normal attack vectors, but how do you address the fact that any one of your employees could potentially have a full Linux system beneath their skin? What if somebody implanted, you know, an HID or a prox access card? If I wind up in a restricted location on-prem, you have zero indications of compromise in terms of how I got there, and your DFIR team is going to play hell. You know, chip implants use the exact same technologies that the enterprises are using. RFID for door badges, NFC for IoT, MyFair and HID proximity cards, and that's just a couple of them. With the number of regulations and audits that companies are required to do for your compliance, how would you know if somebody had bypassed your security and brought a rogue asset into your environment? The very simple answer is you would not. This is called a peg leg. This is a single board computer that's been modified to a minimalist form factor with a wireless charging receiver and then encased in some type of biopolymer and then implanted within the body, typically on the front of the leg right below where the pockets are. And the reason being is because you take an external battery pack that can do rapid charging, slip that into the pocket, and it'll actually power up the device. You know, the possibilities for this are pretty much endless because at this point you have the ability to have a Wi-Fi hotspot. You also can access this device over SSH. And if you're crazy enough like me, you've actually given enough thought to the point of actually cutting your leg open and actually adding quite a bit of copper wire to turning your entire leg into an antenna. And yes, I am working on this. I'm actually in talks with the owner of Dangerous Things, and they're actually going to be encapsulating my devices for me. I'm working with a KiCad designer out of the DHA, the Dallas Hackers Association, and we're basically building me a custom Raspberry Pi Zero type device, but with multiple Bluetooths and multiple Wi-Fi, so I can actually do Wi-Fi attacks and do evil twin attacks in areas where I'm not even allowed to bring in a cell phone. So everybody here wants to see the attacks because that's where things really start getting fun. So I'm going to start talking about the first attack I'm actually going to show you guys. This one's actually around the issues of physical access. And I'd be willing to bet everyone here, somewhere on your on-prem, you have some restricted location. You know, that's just kind of the part of doing business. You know, and I'd be willing to bet that probably there are a large number of people that actually, you guys got your badges on a lanyard or some kind of, oh, I'm seeing people moving. All right, let me show you why that's not necessarily a good thing. So this is the first attack that I debuted. This one's called Handshake. This is a clone and replay attack that utilizes a tool like a Proxmart to read or scrape the data that's contained on a card or a fob. Then I'm going to just turn around and I'm going to write that information back down to the implant in my hand. And then when I compromise your physical locations, You can search me, you can call the police. You're not going to find any tools, you're not going to find a cloned card. So I'm a very open guy. I want you guys to see everything that's happening, so I'm going to give it to you pretty simple. So we're going to start off by opening up the Proxmark Chameleon mini tool. Yes, that's was my ID, and yes, I look like every hacker clip art you've ever seen. So the first thing we do is we actually import the new UID for my badge, and we're going to go ahead and pull that up. And I'm going to go ahead and just rename this one to Len's ID. And before anybody thinks about trying to steal this, I've actually already got another ID, but you get an A for effort. So from here, I need to be able to have a baseline. So I'm going to scan the MyFair Classic card in my hand. We'll pull in a new UID, pull it up on screen, and we're just going to go ahead and we're going to rename that one to Len's ID, or I'm sorry, Implant. So now we have our second piece of information. Now, at this point, I like to show, just in case I'm part of a larger collective, we can actually share this information amongst the rest of the people in my hacking group. Throw it up on Google Drive. Your data is now able to be used by anybody. But just for the fun of it, I'm going to actually open up a different tool. This one's called the MyFair Classic tool, and I'm going to import both of those dumps, and we're going to run a diff against them. So we import the first file, pull it down, and we're going to grab the second file, import it in, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to just pull up the diff. We're going to select the implant, and we're going to select my ID. The only thing that's different is sector 0 line A. So at this point, all I really need to do is just write the information back down. So I select my ID. I can even do this with the cell phone. Rewrite it, write all tags, write all sectors. Data successfully written. So now what we're going to do is go back into the Proxmark Chameleon Mini, and we're going to scan my implant one more time. So we go ahead and do that, move over to channel 3. Here's my hand again. Here's my implant, read the implant. Import the UID. We're going to name this one Implant 2. And if you take a look up there at the top, you'll notice that the last 4 digits of sector 0 line 8 should be 6869. So there's my implant, and here's the ID. They're the same. So at this point now, I can actually walk right up to your badge reader, scan my hand, and if you have a single point of failure without any type of shield or RBAC or PIN, I'm now inside your secured locations, and you have no idea how I got there. So the next 2 attacks that I'm going to be showing are going to both be utilizing the NFC, or the Near Field Communication Protocol. If you're not familiar with NFC, most people have it sitting in their pockets right now. Most cell phones have it built in. Standard use for NFC could be anything from beaming a file or using an app to transmit a signal to a receiver to allow some type of action to take place. And the implant that I'll be using for the next 2 attacks is going to be that FlexNex, which is the large implant that's in the top of my right hand. So the first attack I'm going to show you is leprosy. Yeah, hey, it's my attack. I get to name it. You know, this attack does require a little bit of social engineering, and NFC must be enabled. Aside from that, this one is really, really not that hard. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a situation where, as you can probably guess, like I said originally, I'm not from California. So if I started getting up here and started throwing some major fit about the fact that my phone's dead, and I was in the middle of a conversation with my wife, and there was something going on with one of my grandchildren, you know, and I was making some kind of a big fit, I guarantee you somebody here, even though we're at a security conference, they would be there to help me out. And the truth is, all I need to do is get my hands on the device. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the chip that's in my hand. I'm going to program that chip to point to a location out on the web where I will have an APK that I created with MFS Venom as part of the Metasploit framework. Well, it looks like I'm trying to actually make a phone call. What I'm doing is actually installing this. So I'm actually going to act this out for you. Again, I like to be very upfront. So on the top of the screen, what you see is a ngrok session for some obfuscation. And we're going to start the Metasploit console down in the secondary lower frame. So we open up Metasploit, load in a resource file, just to make things a little bit quick. Execute that, start the listener. Okay, here we go. We're going to do this in real time for you. Oh my God, something happened to, can somebody help me out here? Thank you. Just, all right, what's my wife's phone number? 734, oh God, who actually uses phone numbers anymore? I mean, I usually just pick it up in my contacts. Okay, got to remember, 734, 612, no, that's my phone number. What is my wife's number? Good Lord, something happened to my 3-year-old granddaughter. I don't know what the hell I'd do if something happened to her. 734, shit. I can't remember, man. I really appreciate it. I'm just gonna have to go plug my phone in. We're already done. Just like that, there's my reverse TCP shell. We can pull sysinfo. I can dump your SMS calls. I can dump your call list. I can even pop a shell and actually traverse your actual device at this point. And with this attack also allows me the ability for advanced persistence. So if we can actually just do a quick ls, and you'll see that I'm actually in the storage device of that actual Android. So this is the last use case that we're going to be discussing today. This one I lovingly named Flesh Hook. I know, it's beautiful. This one is a little bit more dangerous than leprosy is, because this one we're actually going to take into configuration the beef suite. Everybody here familiar with beef? Okay, if you're not familiar with beef, this is B-Sides, go look into it. Beef is one of the most, in my opinion, underrated tools that we have when it comes for popping web clients. So Beef is the browser exploit extension framework. This is the website where if you actually log into the website, it will actually launch a JavaScript, hook the browser, and allow me interaction on that device, up to and including on-device spear phishing. So what makes this one a little bit more dangerous than leprosy is the fact that I don't actually have to install anything on your device. All I have to do is just get it to actually interact with the chip and redirect you to the actual infected website. Considering the fact that I spend a lot of my time around developers and a lot of technical people, for the purposes of my demonstration, I actually created a copy of the Putty website, and all I have to do is get your browser to go to that website. So once again, requires a little bit of social engineering, but as you can see in that last demonstration, I'm a pretty good actor. So it'll actually take us longer to actually pull up the Beef suite than it will to actually compromise the device. So once we go ahead and get this up, we'll go ahead and log into the web UI from the Beef control panel here. And we are ready to actually go ahead and start trying to hook browsers. Again, not that hard. I can make a fake Google page. All I need to do is to get it to pop up on that device. And again, I'm triggering it through the NFC use of my implants. Pulls up Putty, and that's really all that's required. Back in Beef, I hooked a new browser. It's an Android device. Now we can actually do things like geolocate the device, utilizing modules. I also have an entire suite of additional tools that I can actually utilize. So, like I said, let's go ahead and do a get geolocation. Gives us a list of different APIs that we can actually choose from. And we'll go ahead and run this, and you'll see very, very quickly that it's going to actually return the fact that I am in Texas. Yep, city of Pflugerville. It's where I was when I actually recorded this video. We can also get information on types of internet connectivity. We can launch on-device spear phishing attacks. We can even DNS enumerate whatever network this device is actually connected to. So this brings us to the future part of this chat. Who will we become as technology continues to evolve? You know, when we talk about the future of, biomedical and implant technology in general, it's almost like we're trying to write a brand new science fiction movie. You have companies like Tesla that are working on technology like the Neuralink. A brain implant that actually allows interfacing between the brain directly to a terminal. To me, this just sounds like a man-in-the-middle situation that's just waiting to happen. Tesla actually released some new data recently in terms of their trials, and I want to say they implanted the chip in 13 monkeys, and they had an issue with 7 out of them. It's not really to the point where I think I'm ready to let somebody put one in my head. But what you don't hear a lot about is Neuralink's biggest competitor actually is doing amazing work and have moved into human trials where they're actually attaching microchips to spinal columns and restoring motility to paralyzed people. And it's already proven they've done it. We also have different things that are coming out. We have the ability to have smart contact lenses, where they're actually looking at powering contact lenses with technology that would allow for facial recognition. Personally, I'm a big fan of EFF out there. Don't like the idea, but I think the technology is pretty damn cool. What about things like the Willet? If you haven't heard of this is actually a Bluetooth transmitter and receiver that requires no internal batteries and actually gets its power from the air. Or what about implantable Wi-Fi transmitters and receivers? There's a product out there currently under development called the Neurograin. And it's the hopes of this manufacturer to actually turn human beings into the world's largest Wi-Fi mesh network. And none of us have ever hacked our neighbor's Wi-Fi, right? I'm just saying, it'll give hacking the neighbor's Wi-Fi a whole new meaning if you're actually hacking a receiver in this person's body. And these are just currently what we know about. The biggest restriction to advanced technology implants is one thing and one thing only. It's power. There's no current effective way to provide clean power to any devices on a commercial implant. This is the same issue with the peg leg and why was the need for the indirect power receiver. It's not always the computer or the technology that needs to catch up. In this case, the only thing that's holding back progress is power. And once that's been addressed, the possibility of a 24/7 access to an embedded system inside the human body is not a far stretch. And with the advents that we're seeing now with graphene batteries, there's also been amazing new biomedical breakthroughs where they're actually able to generate power from the body's thermal dynamics and heat. So we're not too far off from seeing much new advancements in this scope. Whenever I get into these conversations, I do want to take a quick minute just to talk about legality, morality, and ethical issues around implantable technologies. From a legal perspective, there is absolutely no federal laws regarding microchip implants here within the US. At the state level, as you can see from the graphic here, there are multiple states that have adopted different types of legislation. There's pretty much fall into one of two categories. One is basically a ban on employers mandating that their employees get microchipped. And yes, this is something that did come up. They were looking at this as a way for time and attendance, as well as interfacing to the equipment within the warehouse and log in, log off identification. But, I'd love to say that this is the US and we don't force people to get shots and things put in their body, but we all went through COVID and I'm not going to go down that political rabbit hole. The other typical legislation that we have seen is just a general ban on microchip implants, period. So let's take a minute and talk about liability from an employer's perspective. If an employee gets chipped, does that in and of itself make that employee a security risk? What if they're just using the chip to access a gym, or they're using it so that they can drive their Tesla? Is that something that a CISO or a CIO would feel that they should be informed about? We allow our employees to bring personal cell phones to work with the exclusion of restricted areas, but detection of these types of devices is very easy to see. When it comes to implants from a security perspective, this may help from a I forgot to bring my badge to work today kind of a perspective, but it does not necessarily increase the posture of the security scope for that organization. If you're decide to go out drinking on Friday night, you can leave your work badge at home. Once you put these chips in you, they're on all the time. People have actually asked me, what do I do to make sure that I'm protected? I actually had to go out and have Faraday gloves created so that I could actually take myself to DEF CON, Black Hat, and I can go around people that may try to, abuse my technology. Before you ask, no, they could not do anything that could physically cause me pain, harm, or anything like that. But what they could do is actually close out the tags to the point where I could no longer write new data to them and use them, at which point I would actually have to have them removed and replaced. You have no idea the amount of questions I've been asked since I decided to go down this road. Some of my favorites are, is the big lump in your hand, did you get that after you got your COVID vaccine? Yes. Is this the same chip that's in my dog or my cat? Possibly. It's basically one of two styles. It's either an NFC chip or an RFID chip. So technically the answer is yes. The one that I love is I've actually been targeted by some extreme religious groups. This is the one that I'm currently dealing with right now. I am now a target for the religious extremes, and apparently I have the mark of the beast. News to me. Didn't know. I always thought I was a pretty nice guy. But I've had people that I have known my entire life. If I walk into a room, they'll shut their phones off. They'll take the batteries out of their phones. I have been received with everything from skepticism to downright fear. It's my hope that, as I did say earlier on in the presentation, unfortunately not all of us are friendly, but most of us are. Finally, how far is too far? We've briefly touched on the Neuralink and the peg leg. These are two very different products with broad sweeping ramifications to the individual as well as employers and law enforcement. I'm going to carbon date myself here, but I remember a movie from back in 1995 called Johnny Mnemonic, where the lead actor had a hard drive in his head and was using it as a storage device, and he was transporting, stolen data. Or, what about the Matrix, where if we want to learn something, we just basically load the skill set and we have it. The genie is out of the bottle, and there is absolutely no way that it's going to go back in. And as technology continues to advance and improve the quality of life, we need to remember that any tool, regardless of what its original intent was, can be misused. And as security professionals, we need to be aware of this and adapt our countermeasures to include these new types of attack vectors. And the fact that there's nothing unilateral across the board will mean that most locations, this is going to become a corporate decision on how to address augmented humans. And without a better understanding of the technologies being discussed, these choices may be made for the wrong reasons. To say anyone with an implanted technology is an automatic threat would be saying that any car owner could be a vehicular homicide suspect somewhere in the future. So the fact is there's no real way to detect this type of technology currently. So the only thing that we can do as security administrators and professionals is we need to basically just heap on that layered approach and don't allow single points of access or single points of compromise. If you're using just a standard one-read badge to get into a restricted location. You wouldn't do that with your data. We multi-factor everything. There are multiple different options that we can do, from a PIN to RBAC to shields. There's other options. And as far as when it comes to compromising your mobile devices, the best advice I can give you is, if you're not using NFC, turn it off. It is an insecure protocol at its core. And as such, trying to correct a physical limitation of a protocol with application security is never going to be 100%. So with that, I would like to open the floor to any type of questions. Seriously? None? Okay, come on. I was going to say, this is the weirdest thing you guys have heard all day, and there were no questions.
Do you have any physical consequences to it? Like, I mean, you mentioned the magnets, the pain, but any other... Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you had any consequences, especially physically, like, I don't know, I'm thinking if you have to go get like your brain scanned. I know you cannot have implants, things like that at airports when you cross, things like that.
The simple answer is MRIs are no longer something I can do. If I go into an MRI, it will rip them right out of my body. I actually have it on all of my emergency forms, and I'm actually going in a couple of weeks and getting it tattooed, no MRI, across both of my hands. In terms of my personal issues, I did have one bit of an issue when I had the big one put in the top of my hand. Excuse me. It was my own damn fault. Just like any other surgery, my body mod guy told me, he's like, get on anti-inflammatories prior to going in. I didn't do it. I waited, and I wound up getting a hematoma on the top of my hand. It looked like I had about a half a softball in there for about 2 weeks. Went to my actual doctor, and they wanted to schedule me for emergency removal surgery, and it was like, I just paid a lot of money to put that in there. Can I just get some Motrin? Yeah, doctors don't know what the hell to make of me. That was probably the worst thing that's happened to me from a personal health perspective. But I like I said, I got two more sitting at home, and as soon as I get home from this trip, I'll be adding those to the body and getting new functionality.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Have you had any issues with implants that are now outdated, or that you've had removed and replaced or upgraded? And I'm specifically thinking about the wallet one that you mentioned and the technology that's in that.
Okay, good question. I haven't been lucky enough where I have not had any of my chips go bad. The nice thing about the chips is we're dealing with basically technology and protocols, so they really don't change. There is some issues with the wallet more, and it's actually something that's actually been brought up a lot in some of the Reddit conversations, and there was actually something posted, I want to say it was 2 or 3 days ago, by the Walletmore staff. Anyone who gets one of these implants, there is a limitation on the amount of time that they'll be valid for. It's just like a credit card. Due to the fact that, the initial chips that were released actually had a little bit lower amount of time than they wanted. All U.S. They call us ambassadors because we all know that the word guinea pig is not a really good thing to say. But I mean, we all know what we are. So they'll be actually giving us a replacement before the end of 2023 that will actually keep us, I want to say it's for an additional 4 years past that. At that point, it's going to be either a get it replaced, or we'll have to see where the technology goes between now and then.
Hey, great talk. Questions, things that are considerations for like TSA or custom when you're going in and out of the country, or a new doctor, medical procedures, ER. I mean, lots of potentially issues. So go from there.
Believe it or not, I do fly internationally. I was actually just in Sweden about 2.5 weeks ago. There is not enough metal within all of my implants to trigger any type of aviation magnetometer. Also, I've been through the whole body scan x-ray things, and they don't find them. I mean, when you look at the one that I would expect them to find would actually be the magnet, because it's actually an iron core with wrapped in titanium. That one is the biggest amount of metal. But even through all the rest of them, they may be very large, but at the same time, most of it is biomass material or biopolymer, so there's really not a lot of metal. The circuitry is actually going to be silicone, so the amount of actual metal is not that much. Which I'm really kind of nervous, because I'm actually going to be giving a bit of a varied version of this talk to Interpol here in a couple of months. I might not have the same ability to go in and out of airports and customs as easily afterwards, but you know, you go where the boss tells you to go. Sure.
Have you ever had the feeling that your telephone was vibrating when it wasn't in the same room as you?
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Vibrate-y.
I meant more at a deeper level, but...
Bad.
Oh, right.
Really, really bad. Although the one thing that actually, in terms of feeling stuff, the one that actually is the worst for me is my wife's can opener. She's got one of those, you know, nice, big, heavy-duty can openers, and I can be in, all I have to be is in the general vicinity, and she opens a can, and I can actually feel it in that magnet, even if I'm 3 to 5 feet away. So... I mean, I'm telling you, she's just running you over here.
So, in future, as this technology evolves and companies and governments start noticing it, how do you see the impact on insurance, and how do insurance companies will take this from a body mod perspective?
To be honest, it's something I've actually given a lot of thought to. The fact that we're seeing as much espionage, I'm surprised. Let me rephrase. I would not be surprised if the governments were not using some type of this technology for nation-state activities. I do know for a fact that I'm not the only guy here in the States that are doing this. I know a couple of actual red teamers who, I'm not going to call them out. It's not my place. But I know that this type of process has been used as an initial foothold during red team engagements to gain that initial foothold on a mobile device, then lateral through the mobile device back into the enterprise through enterprise-based application and VPN.
This is all very cool. Wouldn't it be just as easy to put it in jewelry?
Yeah, but here's the difference. The main thing, and the first thing I said when I decided to go do this research is, I'm not doing anything that necessarily hasn't been done. I'm just doing it in a way that there are 0 IOCs. I mean, realistically, if you catch me and I've got like a gaudy bracelet, or I started off honestly using like the NFC rings and different RFID jewelry, and it was good, but at the same time, if I got caught, there would be some type of indication of how I got in there. What I'm doing now is, in my opinion, the ultimate, sneaking under the radar, because even if you caught me in your data center, all I have to do is say, door was open. Okay, well, you can't search me because you're not an authority, but even if you called the police, they could come over, empty my pockets, they could, there's no way for you to prove how I got in there. And from an obfuscation perspective, that's what these new attack vectors really, have going for them, is the fact that nobody knows that they exist. So how do you prevent somebody like me if you don't even know somebody like me is real?
Thanks.
No problem. You're getting your steps in today, man.
Yeah.
So you get caught in somewhere where you're not supposed to be. And right now, they wouldn't think of scanning you. But what about when it starts becoming better known and they bring out the wands and start going up and down and looking?
Well, what's the sensitivity? I mean, if it's the same as a magnetometer in an airport, you're not going to find nothing. On top of the fact that here in the United States, we have something called HIPAA, which anything that's inside my body, you're not legally allowed to ask me about anyway.
And even scan for?
You can scan, but all I got to do is say it's medical. I've tied your hands. Just remember, bureaucracy and regulations can work both ways.
Hi, are you currently talking about state of things here in US? Because I would like to understand what's going on, say, in China, from the same, basically in the same state of, what's the state of art there?
The state is the same everywhere. I actually just got done having a discussion with one of the Japanese newspapers. As far as I'm aware, I'm the first guy that's actually come out and shown this as a viable attack methodology. I'm not going to say I'm the guy that invented it. I'm just the one that's bringing it forward. But to the best of my knowledge, these particular vectors have not been used in the wild for an actual breach. But like I said, they have been used in red team exercises. So I know that they work. Well, there's no more questions. I just wanted to say thank you guys very much for coming in and listening to the crazy guy talk. Hit me up on LinkedIn or whatnot. Appreciate your time, guys.